Happiness is a condition rather than a destination. Happiness cannot be pursued. The more we aim at happiness, the more we miss our aim. It is a side effect of having a purpose and a meaning to life. He was in a Jewish concentration camp. He was a psychologist or a psychiatrist? He was a psychiatrist. He knew that the only thing that they couldn't take away from him was his thoughts. And the most important thing there says, it is a side effect of having a purpose and meaning to life. To enjoy the journey, to be able to get there, and to spread it around. We have found at the Persuasion Institute that, surprisingly, one of the things that opens the door of persuasion with people and influence is optimism. Optimistic people live longer, they make more money, they're more successful, and more people want to be influenced by them. It's an internal. Talking about mindset. We talked about our philosophy of money. Important, too, as we look at success, is that you learn to follow your heart. Many people are going to have criticism about you and different things, and they'll have their own opinions. For example, Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield, the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. You've heard Chicken Soup for the Soul? They were so excited when they came up with this concept because they knew in their hearts it was a New York Times bestseller. And they went to different publishers and they said, no, we don't like it. And over 100 publishers turned them down. 100 publishers turned them down. And their hearts were telling them, no, those 100 publishers are wrong. We're following our heart. Then their own agent fired them. And then they finally found a publisher. They got it published, became a New York Times bestseller, and since then, they have sold over 100 million copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul. So it doesn't matter what other people say, you follow your heart. Your heart's going to tell you what you should and should not be doing. Bill Gates, same thing, Harvard University, 17 years old, bright kid. His heart was telling him, you need to start a computer software company. Because if you don't, somebody else will. So he talks to his guidance counselors at school, and what do they say? What are you, crazy? You're at Harvard University. This is a great university. You stay here, get a 4-year degree, and go work for a large company like Enron, because they'll take care of you. Yeah. The rest is history. He followed his heart. It's so important that you learn to do that and understand that the universe will test you. Has anybody felt kicked in the head and left for the dead by the universe before? It happens. And this is the thing you have to understand. When you face a challenge, a trial, an obstacle, or situation in your life, it's not there to upset you. It's there because you need to learn something to take your life or your income to the next level. It's either going to make you a better person or a bitter person. It's going to make you grow or give you grief. We face these challenges throughout our life. I remember moving from California to Pennsylvania, working on a graduate degree in business, a master's in business administration, worked through, and about halfway through my heart was telling me, you need to start a business. You're an entrepreneur. And tell my family and friends, and what do they say? Oh, 90%, right? Most businesses fail. You don't want to do that. Well, we got things going, found a venture capitalist, and I was going to show them. And I did for a couple years, 2, 3 years. And long story short, circumstances beyond my control, a large knife in my back. The company went belly up. I found myself thousands of miles from anybody I knew and over $100,000 in personal debt. The universe had kicked me in the head, left me for dead, lowest point in my life, and then my friends call. And what do they say? Told you so. They're kicking me in the head some more. Sometimes we feel like a baby giraffe. Most people don't know this. When a baby giraffe is born, it falls about 5, 6 feet from its mother's womb, lands onto the hard earth. Welcome to life. And then the loving mother comes over and starts kicking it as hard as she can. You know, baby giraffe doesn't know what's going on. It gets up and it wobbles a little bit. Then the mother kicks its feet out from underneath and it falls down again. And if it doesn't hop up, guess what? She starts kicking it again. Now, has anybody ever felt that way before? Now, the mother's not being mean or abusive. If that giraffe can't get up and run as soon as possible, what's going to happen? They'll be eaten. The results will be devastating. And sometimes, so here it is, lowest point in my life. The phone calls are coming in. And it was terrible. It was hard. And so we moved from Pennsylvania to Seattle, Washington. Family and friends, oh, now you'll get a corporate job. I'm thinking, I can't pay that off with a corporate job. That's not me. You know, they're setting up interviews for Boeing and all these large companies. I'm like, that's not me. Long story short, although that experience was very expensive, although very painful, and it was a large piece of humble pie, I moved in with my in-laws, so it was a very large piece of humble pie. That experience, all the painful and expensive, taught me the desire, the drive, the motivation, the skills that I needed to know to take my life and my income to the next level. Do I wish that upon anybody? No. Was it painful? Yes. But the message is this: there'll be tests along the way. It's not there to upset you. It's there to make you a better person, to give you the skills to take your life and income to the next level. It's important. Once you understand that, when you hit those roadblocks, those bumps in the road, it's not going to affect you as much. Okay, number 2, one of the reasons we're here is persuasion. So we have self-persuasion. We call this the success blueprint. These are the 4 quadrants. Sales mastery and understanding human psychology. Persuasion. Now here's the thing, and you're talking to people, are you a guest or a pest? Doesn't matter what you think, it's what they think. And that's what we find with people is they think, oh, people like me. They don't. They've got the front door locked, and sometimes you have to go to the side door sometimes. But are you a guest or a pest? So if we go to the proverbial old style salesperson. Now there's a one-to-one relationship like we talked about with your income and your persuasion skills, and less than 1% really know how to persuade and influence, all the skills of persuasion. Because this is what we're finding as we're doing research, is that most people have 3 to 4 persuasion techniques they use over and over again. Top producers have about 7 to 8, and we've identified over 100. So very few people have taken the time to study human nature, to study persuasion. Because most of persuasion, and here's the thing that's really going to set us apart today, 95% of all persuasion involves a subconscious trigger. It just feels right. I just trust the person. And many of the people you talk to will lie to you. Have you noticed that? They'll make things up. They don't want to hurt your feelings. And many of you are guilty of the same thing. You go to a furniture store, they push a little too hard, you get that little feeling inside, you're a little uncomfortable, and what do? Just looking. Or you lie, you leave, talk to a spouse, I'll come back later. And when we talk about the psychology of objections, you have to understand that almost 70% of the time when people say, I can't afford it, they're lying to you. They have learned that's an easy way to get rid of you. And then you've been learned how to handle that objection. Oh, really? Compared to what? Yeah? Or you have these little objections. So you're solving the wrong objection most of the time. And that's where the pain really starts, and that's when people start getting upset, less than 1%. And what we want to do is get people to beg for your product, to want your product. Just like, well, why I use the word magnetic, you're attracting metal filings. You know, you're attracting people to you. That's what you're looking for. And we want to call it the keys of the piano persuasion. As I mentioned before, most people are only using a few of the keys. They're playing chopsticks on the piano persuasion. What we want to do is get you to play Mozart. The more tools you have, the more successful you're going to be. That's just what it comes down to. The more tools you have, the more successful you're going to be. How many of you own a post hole digger? I see your hands. Anybody? A few of you? How often do you use it? Probably just the first time you bought it, right? But when you needed it, you needed it. And when you need it again. So some of these tools you only might be using 2 or 3 times a year, but if that seals the deal, is it worth it? It is, and some people require specialized tools. So as you look at the piano persuasion today, we'll be talking about dissonance, verbal packaging, trust, connectivity. The reality is, you look at the whole world of persuasion, there's a lot of different tools that we want to get into your toolbox to make sure that you're successful. More tools equals more success. So let's go into some definitions. Persuasion. Persuasion is what you do when you say. The techniques you use. Persuasion is what you do when you say. That's what we're talking about in this section, is persuasion, the techniques. Then there's influence. Now, influence is a higher form of persuasion. Influence is who you are, your trust, your credibility, your passion. Is there anybody in your life right now that would ask you for $1,000, you would give it to them, no questions asked? Is there? You see your hand. Is there? Okay, there is. That's influence. You don't need a fact, a figure. You've developed enough influence and trust that they say, okay. It's a higher form of persuasion. The next is negotiation, which is actually a lower form of persuasion. Negotiation techniques are important, but it's a lower form because with persuasion and influence, you're bringing them to your point of view. Negotiation, you're fighting it out and you're kind of meeting in the middle. That's what negotiation is. And then there's power. Is power good or bad? Yes. Is gravity good or bad? Both. It depends if you're walking or falling out of a tree. And that's what these persuasion, and when I teach you these skills of persuasion, they can be used for good or bad. I mean, persuasion's used to get children on drugs, and it's used to get them off drugs, to keep them off drugs. I mean, they're neutral, just like gravity, and that's why it's important to use them for good. Now, power is interesting. Power is like a trump card. It increases your ability to persuade and influence. Does that uniform on a police officer increase their ability to persuade and influence you? It does, doesn't it? The car, the white jacket, the degrees on the wall, the lawyers, you know, their credibility, their expertise increase their ability to persuade and influence. And you want to come across that way as an expert.